Hello, I'm Laura Castillejos. I'm a nurse. I'm from Barcelona, Spain. And the last 10 years, I've been working in intensive care units in a big hospital in Barcelona. And in this, I'm going to tell you about infection control. So the lesson goals for this presentation are what is infection? We are going to talk also about type of microorganisms, types of infection, nosocomial and health-related infections, chain of infection, defenses against infection, strategies to prevent it, infection prevention and control, transmission-based precautions, and sterile techniques. About infection, we know that microorganisms are everywhere, in water, in soil, and on body surface, such as skin, intestinal tract, and other areas open to the outside, such as our mouth, upper respiratory tract, vagina, and lower urinary tract. Many of them are harmless, others are lethal, and some are a normal part of our body, like those directly involved in providing a biologically safe environment. So what does infection mean? Infection is just the growth of microorganisms in body tissue where they should not be. And we will go now through some concepts related to infection that we will use often along this class. So the first one is infectious agent. Is such a microorganism is called an infectious agent, or the SARS, a germ, a virus, or other microbes. Asymptomatic if the microorganisms produce no clinical evidence of disease, then we call the infection asymptomatic or subclinical. Disease, a detectable alteration in normal tissue function. Virulence, microorganisms vary in their virulence or their ability to produce disease, the severity of the diseases they produce, and their degree of communicability. Pathogenicity is the ability to produce disease. Thus, a pathogen is a microorganism that causes disease. Asepsis. Asepsis is the freedom from disease-causing microorganisms. A septic technique is used to decrease the possibility of transferring microorganisms from one place to another. Medical asepsis includes all practice intended to confine a specific microorganism to a specific area, limiting the number, growth, and transmission of microorganisms. Surgical asepsis or sterile technique refers to those practices that keep an area or an object free of all microorganisms. It includes practice that destroy microorganisms and spores. And finally, sepsis is the condition in which acute organ dysfunction occurs secondary to infection. So there are different types of microorganisms. Let's see. 4 major categories of microorganisms cause infection in humans. These 4 categories are bacteria, viruses, fungi, and parasites. Bacteria are the most common infection-causing microorganisms. Several hundred species can cause disease in humans and can live and be transported through air, waters, food, soil, body tissues, and fluids, and inanimate objects. Viruses consist primarily of nucleic acid and therefore must enter living cells in order to reproduce. So common virus families include rhinovirus, causes the common cold, hepatitis, herpes, and human immunodefensive virus. Fungi includes yeast and molds. Candida albicans is a yeast considered to be normal flora in the human vagina. And parasites live on other living microorganisms. They include protozoals, such as the one that causes malaria, helminths, worms, and arthropods, mites, fleas, and ticks. Infection occurs when newly introduced or resident microorganisms succeed in invading a part of the body where the host defense mechanisms are ineffective and the pathogen causes tissue damage. So we will see now the different types of infections. We have, for example, local infection. A local infection is limited to a specific part of the body where the microorganisms remain. Systemic infection is the microorganisms spread and damage different parts of the body, and then we can call it systemic infection. Bacteremia, when a culture of a person's blood reveals microorganisms, the condition is called bacteremia. Septicemia, when bacteremia results in systemic infection. It's referred to as septicemia, which has become common over time. Acute infection generally appears suddenly or lasts a short time. And a chronic infection may occur slowly over a very long period and can be months or years. Also, we are going to talk about nosocomial and health-related infections that are originate in the hospital, and it's a subgroup of healthcare-associated infections, or we can call them HAIs. Urinary tract. The most common microorganisms in the urinary tract include Escherichia coli, improper catheterization technique, Enterococcus species, and Pseudomonas aeruginosa. The most common microorganisms in surgical sites include Staphylococcus aureus, including MRSA, and Enterococcus species, including vancomycin resistant strains, and Pseudomonas aeruginosa also. And in bloodstream, the most common microorganisms include coagulase-negative Staphylococcus aureus, and Staphylococcus species. And for pneumonia, the most common causative microorganisms for pneumonia include Staphylococcus aureus, Pseudomonas aeruginosa, and Staphylococcus species. So here I attach a picture about the role of infection prevention and control in preventing antibiotic resistance in healthcare. It's very interesting because highs have a significant impact on morbidity and mortality and quality of life and carry an economic burden to society. However, a large proportion of these diseases are preventable, and there is a growing body of evidence to help raise awareness of the global burden of harm caused by these infections, including strategies to reduce their spread. So here you can see all the different actions we have during the health system life. And it's very interesting to just go through this website, and they have a lot of information about these infections. We are going to talk about the chain of infection, and there are different elements in the infection chain. First one is the etiologic agent, the extent to which any microorganism is capable of producing an infectious process depends on the number of microorganisms present, the virulence and potency of the microorganisms, the ability of the microorganisms to enter the body, the susceptibility of the host, and the ability of the microorganisms to live in the host body. Also, we have reservoirs are sources of microorganisms. Common sources are other humans, the client's own microorganisms, plants, animal, or the general environment. A carrier is a person or an animal reservoir or of a specific infectious agent that usually doesn't manifest any clinical signs of the disease. Then we have the method of transmission. After a microorganism leaves its source or reservoir, it requires a means of transmission to reach another person or host through a receptive portal of entry. There are three mechanisms. The first one is a direct transmission, which involves immediate and direct transfer of microorganisms from person to person through touching, beating, kissing, or sexual intercourse. Indirect transmission may be either vehicle borne or vector borne. And the last one, airborne transmission, that may involve droplets or dust edges, droplet nuclei, and the residue of evaporate droplets emitted by infectious hosts, such as someone with tuberculosis, can remain in the air for long periods. We have also a portal of entry to susceptible hosts. Before a person can become infected, microorganisms must enter the body. Often, microorganisms enter the body of the host by the same route they used to leave the source. And finally, susceptible host. A susceptible host is any person who is at risk for infection. A compromised host is a person at increased risk, an individual who, for one or many reasons, is more likely than others to acquire an infection. Individuals have defenses that protect the body from infection, and they are categorized as specific and non-specific defenses. We are not going to go deeper into these concepts because they are very intense and extensive, but if you have any question about this, just write me to my email. It's important for you to know that non-specific defenses protect the person against all microorganisms, and they include anatomic and physiological physiologic barriers and the inflammatory response. And then we have also the specific defense that involves all the immune system. The immune system response has two components: antibodies and cellular mediated defenses. So as a nurses, we can do a lot of things to prevent these infections. We have a lot in our hands to improve in these control infections strategies. So let's see. The first one is preventing nosocomial infections. Meticulous use of medical and surgical asepsis is necessary to prevent the transport of potential infectious microorganisms. Also, hand hygiene uh, is very important, and you know that we are always talking about that. We have a lot of courses and videos about how to wash our hands and how to do it and how to prevent infections uh, through the hand hygiene. Also, nutrition and water. A balanced diet enhances the health of all the body tissues, helps keep the skin intact, and promotes the skin ability to repel microorganisms. Adequate nutrition enables tissues to maintain and rebuild themselves and helps keep the immune system functioning well. Sleep is very important also. Adequate sleep is essential to health and to renewing our energy. Stress is another factor, is super important because excessive stress predisposes people to infections. Nurses can teach patients how to learn stress reducing techniques. Immunizations, the use of immunization has dramatically decreased the incidence of infectious disease. It's recommended that immunizations begin shortly after birth and be complete in early childhood, except for boosters. Disinfecting the first links in the chain of infection, the etiologic agent and the reservoir are interrupted with the use of antiseptics. Antiseptics are the agents that inhibit the growth of some microorganisms. And disinfectants are agents that destroy pathogens other than spores. And by sterilization, both antiseptics and disinfectants are said to have bactericidal or bacteriostatic properties. A bactericidal preparation destroys bacteria, whereas a bacteriostatic preparation prevents the growth of and reproduction of some bacteria. Sterilization is a process that destroys all microorganisms, including spores and viruses. Here, we can see all the type of precaution, also the description of the personal protective equipment, because all healthcare providers must apply personal protective equipment according to the risk of exposure to potentially infective materials. So you can see different transmission precautions, and also another examples are virus and bacteria. Sterile technique. An sterile technique is sorry. Yeah. An sterile technique. An object is sterile only when it's free of all microorganisms. The principles of surgical sepsis are: all objects used in a sterile field must be sterile. Sterile objects become unsterile when touched by sterile objects. Sterile objects that are out of sight or below the waist or table level are considered unsterile. Sterile objects may become unsterile by prolonged exposure to airborne microorganisms. Fluids flow in the direction of gravity. Moisture that passes through a sterile surface by capillary action. The edges of a sterile field are considered unsterile, The skin cannot be sterilized and it is unsterile. And conscientiousness, alertness, and honesty are essential qualities in maintaining surgical asepsis. It's very important to follow these principles when we are doing like aseptic tasks. Also, it is very important to use these indications for the hand hygiene. Uh, so healthcare personnel should use an alcohol-based hand rub or wash with soap and water for the following clinical indications. So the first one is immediately before touching a patient. Then, before performing an aseptic task or handling invasive medical devices, and before moving from work on a soiled body site to a clean body site on the same patient, after touching a patient or the patient immediate environment, after contact with blood, body fluids, or contaminated surfaces, and immediately after glove removal. So here there is a picture about infection prevention and hand hygiene for all initiative. So this is very important to prevent all the infections in the hospital. Here, I will show you, we are going to watch a video about infection at the hospital.
Hallo! Jeg tenkte jeg skulle ta oss og se litt på såret ditt. Jeg skal bare ta på et par hansker. Da hadde vi stelt. Så skal vi også se litt på det såret der. Bedre.
Let's see. Also, here I attach this picture and it's very useful because you can see here the key differences between the common pathogens, virus and bacteria. And here also is a picture and we can see here all the virus, bacteria, and then all the suspected respiratory infection, gastrointestinal, urinary. So I think this is very good picture and is a very good resume of infection control. Here there are some references about infection control. And thank you for your attention. If you have any suggestion or question, you can contact me by my name. Thank you very much. See you.